evening, everyone. Welcome to this evening session. We are going to be talking about smart cities and the creative process in the smart cities. We have Mr. Kengo Kuma, an architect from Japan, who has built and taught as well in many different cities in the world, from New York, where he taught and he studied, to Marseille, from Dundee in Scotland, to, for example, Mexico, where he just returned from, and of course Tokyo, where he has offices besides Beijing and besides Paris, where he's building as well. Mr. Kuma is an architect whose works can illustrate two different approaches, two different interests, almost paradoxically. One of them is the updating of tradition and of traditional materials, and the other one is the interest in state-of-the-art technologies and industries. So I believe his works can deal with a very perhaps contradictory idea of what is smart in architecture. Next to me is Deyan Sudjic. Deyan Sudjic is an architect as well, and he's the director of the Design Museum in London. He is, used to be more, perhaps the best, I think the best known and the most reputed critic, architecture critic in Great Britain. And he's written several books, among them one that is considered like the Bible of the mega cities, which is The Endless Cities, together with Ricky Bourdet. He has written and analyzed extensively on architecture, paying attention on the diminishing role of the architect in designing today's cities, and again, on the other hand, paying attention to the very few architects who are designing the most important buildings in the global cities. I myself, I am Anatxu Zabalbeascoa. I'm the architecture correspondent of the Spanish daily El Pais. We'll be showing images in this screen, I guess, on the right or whichever, on that deal with our idea of what the smart city can be and the contradictions we could talk about. First of all, I will ask Mr. Kuma to talk about his idea of a smart city, or whatever his approach for this conversation is going to be. My question being, what is a smart city? The reason why I'm still asking this question is because even if I've been sitting in this room for a few hours this morning, I have several ideas of bits and pieces of things that are smart, that you can do in a city, that work in different cities around the world, but I'm still missing the whole picture. I'm still missing the example of what can be a smart city today. So I would ask our two guests to please be specific. Is there a city that can play a role model in being smart, and why? So please, Mr. Kuma.
Okay. Today I want to show you some images. I want to start from that image. Yes. That picture was after March 11, a big earthquake and tsunami. Up north area in Japan, was very much destroyed, devastated by this earthquake, tsunami. But we got many lessons from that disaster. For what is smart city? Next. Next, please. Next, please. Go to next. Go to next slide, please.
It's not a very smart auditorium.
Yes.
I will do that. Okay, thank you. Yeah, one of the big lessons is waterfront areas actually devastated, destroyed totally. But the small old houses uphill were not destroyed because people knows what is most dangerous area in the city. And sometimes they build small shrine. That shrine indicate the border between the safe area and dangerous area. And they know the limit of human, and they appreciate nature very much. This slide is for the local material. In this village, I found the very, very sustainable material. The material is the earth itself. Those walls and this building was built from the land. But they already forgot that idea. I tried to use the same material, the land itself. This is a building made by the earth, made by the site. And by the use of this material, this is one of the national treasure in Japan. We didn't put any air conditioner for this building. The material itself can control humidity and temperature. I think it's a very smart idea. And this small pavilion we built in Milan, and the hint of this small pavilion is this small toy. So this is traditional small toy for kids, and the smartness of a toy is one simple joint can create any shape. So we adapted this idea for the bigger building, this building. This is a 10-meter high museum, but the idea is very simple. One single unit can make anything. And there's another application, adaptation of this system is this as a small building in Tokyo. It's a 3-story building, but this thick is not decoration. This is for supporting the building. As another example in Tokyo is the culture and tourist center in Asakusa. And Asakusa is a historical area. As a temple still keeping the ambience of this area. But some new buildings, some new concrete building destroy that ambience. And my idea is building should have some volume, but it's basically 7 houses stacking each other. And the section is like that. And each floor has own air conditioning system. And each is basically independent 7 houses. This is the image. And also the material which I use for this building is wood. And the wood can give the very soft and intimate feeling for the building. And the last example is a small town called Takaoka. I was asked to do some project there to reactivate the town. But what I did for the town is to design this aluminum shelf system. So because this town used to be the town of artisan, creating the metal work, beautiful copper, beautiful steel. And then I decided to work with the aluminum company, big aluminum company, started from that city, from town. And then historically, this aluminum shelves is very much related with the town. And the system we worked with that aluminum company is very smart idea. And any kind of shape, and even the building can be built by this aluminum unit. As a combination of the history and with some new items can make some smart as a city or a smart environment.
Different ideas of being smart in building, when building and when doing architecture. Please, Mr. Sudjic, your view.
There's something quite humbling to look at how Japan and its architects have dealt with the terrible events of the earthquake and the tsunami. And it seems, and I visited Japan 2-3 times since the earthquake, there seems to be a very different sensibility in Japan now. Architects seem to have become more thoughtful and less taken up by some of the irrational exuberance that architecture went through towards the end of the 20th century. But outside Japan, I think we're still in the grip of this irrational exuberance. And I sometimes wonder if this focus on the word smart cities might be another version of the obsession we had 10 years ago for something called the Bilbao effect. And it does seem that when people who are experts in the future of cities gather together in a place like this, they seem to become unnaturally susceptible to infectious diseases. And one of these infectious diseases is the idea that one building designed by Frank Gehry can rescue one city from industrial apocalypse. And now also we seem to have this idea that there is this nebulous concept which is the smart city, which when one looks around this hall and beyond this hall, in some cases it means a smart elevator, in other places it means a smart lavatory, it means all those different things which somehow seem to be about a prefabricated solution and a solution bent on bringing something from somewhere else and involving going shopping. Another version of what a smart city might be is what Kengo movingly described as the way that tradition shows which is a safe part of a city, or you might look to this astonishing system in Mumbai with a very low-tech world in which there is this system in which every day tens of thousands of meals are cooked in the outer suburbs and the slums of Mumbai, and they're collected by a network of cyclists in their tins. They take them to the desk of the people that ordered them, never a mistake, and at the end of the day, they're taken back and washed, ready for the next day. It's something which TNT likes to learn from, and it's not digital. I show this image because this is a traditional European city. This is the Corso Venezia in Milan. It's not actually where the Olivetti design studio was. Actually, it's on the other side of the street, but you get the idea. And this is where Ettore Sottsass and Mario Bellini worked to produce one of the world's great industrial companies, Olivetti, which went from making typewriters in 1907 to mainframe computers to this extraordinary object, which when I show it in the Design Museum in London, everybody under 30 has no idea what a typewriter was. Although it's interesting, there is this nostalgia. Tom Hanks has produced an app which turns your laptop into a typewriter with a bell and all those things. And of course, this is an industrial culture which Sottsass was, I think, a gifted genius because he understood that design is both about answering problems but also asking questions. And working for a company which wanted to move from being something which made very dull equipment into consumer items was something which was a very interesting one and was followed later by others. And this is going to be the next headquarters of Apple in Cupertino. The address says everything. It's one infinite loop. And this, not actually here, but from near there, is this where this came from, which was Jonathan Ive's first major contribution to saving Apple from financial oblivion. And there is, I think, some kind of interesting moment. This was the last moment of the cathode ray tube for computers. And Ive and Apple, I think, learned something from what Olivetti had done to understand how you might create an emotional resonance between the objects you use and yourself. But just imagine the different life that takes place here and here. And is this the smart city? Yes, it is. This is where Uber is based. And I saw from this morning's Guardian that Uber has now been accused of harassing journalists who question their policies, who've actually started to access the records of journalists they don't like the look of to find out how they've used Uber to actually see what they're up to. It's where Airbnb is based, not very far from here, which is another extraordinarily disruptive company, which is changing the way that cities work. They're turning people's apartments into hotels. We are at a moment when this is irreversible. But imagine the kind of life you can have in a city like this, where Olivetti were so smart that actually they allowed Sotsas and Mario Bellini to work for anybody they liked. So they were allowed to cross-pollinate companies. And here we have a world in which, well, I think maybe you could say the last thin people in California are going to be herded into here for their own protection, and they work for Apple. And it's, of course, extraordinarily privileged. And what designer would not give their life to work inside this extraordinary company? And yet, how can they interact with the world outside? And to me, the danger of the smart city is that we end up not with a city, because to me a city is a place full of accidents and mistakes and unintended consequences, where for 5,000 years people have gone in search of freedom and choice and the chance to take what they need from a city and to ignore the rest, to a digital village where everyone knows exactly what you're doing, whether it is the government, whether it's big corporations, or even whether it's your fellow citizens organizing a digital lynch mob on Twitter to make sure that you conform.
Okay, so while Mr. Sudjic leaves us at least with the doubt of what is a smart or what a smart city can be, perhaps Mr. Kuma also left us with another doubt that we could perhaps talk over a little bit more. Is technology relevant, important, and fundamental to have a smart city? Can we do the same with pre-technologies? He was talking about different materials, isolating, working as smart materials without being a new fashion, a new level. What is the dependence on technology of smart cities?
Yes, technologies, I don't also want to ignore technology. Technology is very necessary also for achieving the kind of smallness. I think the key word for the smart city, for me, is smallness. The example I show you today is the aluminum system. That aluminum system can be possible by the very advanced aluminum technology. It's a joint technology. And also the stacking house idea is also be made possible by some advanced technology. But by the use of those technology, we can achieve the smallness. And we can go back to the historical district, and some intimacy, the human scale, the warmness, the technology can make it possible. And also, I really enjoy working with engineers, and also at the same time, I really enjoy working with artisans. And the artisanship as very advanced technology should come together for achieving that smallness.
So, Mr. Sudjic, is it possible? Would it be possible to be smart as a city without being technologically advanced, or having little money to invest on technology?
Well, we can't stop the future, even if we wanted to, and I don't think that we do. But I think we need to consider what it's doing. And of course, technology is fascinating. And I've lived in London for 50 years. I was born there, I went to school there, I've used the subway and the buses for all that time, but it was only last year when this app appeared on my iPhone called City App, which is based on live information from Transport for London, which feeds into your app on your smartphone the exact location of every tube train in London and every bus system. And the fact is that Londoners don't understand their bus navigation at all. Maybe you know the route of one bus that you take every day, and that's your London, but London is a much more complex place. And this app will actually make sense of it. It will tell you that you can change buses and get a metro if you want to cross that city. And so for the first time, technology has made me start to understand the city around me. But I'm also somewhat disturbed that on my same iPhone, about a week ago, this little heart-shaped avatar popped up, which, without telling me and without asking me, for the last 3 weeks had been counting how many footsteps I had taken and how many miles I had walked. I know this is because there's going to be an iWatch quite soon, which is going to be monitoring every single one of my life signs, but I was slightly shocked at this thing. It wasn't quite as bad as U2 popping up on my iPhone, but it was getting there. Of course these things are changing, and of course, I mentioned Uber, which is changing the way we navigate by taxi, and there's others like that, and Airbnb is changing the shape of the city. I think there are other ways also in which the world is becoming a global city through technology. So many of those apps also allow extraordinary things. In the Cameroons, you can now, if you are in, Cameroon has about 25 cardiologists per million people. So if you have a heart problem, it's pretty difficult to get to see one. And what a younger designer has done now is to produce a piece of hardware and software which will actually monitor your heart out in the wilds and refer that to the cardiologist back in the capital. There's a great app done in London at Moorfields, the Eye Hospital, which they describe as being an ophthalmology department in your pocket, bit of hardware, bit of software. You can actually analyze people's eyes in sub-Saharan Africa, relay it back to London for diagnosis and back for treatment to Africa. To me, that's changing geography in a fantastically different and positive way. There are negatives and there are positives. Instagram has totally transformed the way that we communicate images, but when Instagram was sold for $1.5 billion, it had 15 employees. Kodak, in its heyday, which you could say was Instagram's early 20th century predecessor, provided jobs, good jobs, for 80,000 skilled people. What are they going to be doing?
Yeah. So technology is changing more the workforce rather than the cities, in your opinion?
I think it's changing everything.
Everything, yeah. Well, what's your ideas? Perhaps 2 decades ago, when talking about domotics, people thought that our homes were going to be transformed. We were going to walk in our houses and get our blood pressure taken, our weight. If there was a breeze outside, windows were going to open, and so on and so forth. And this really never happened, never got to our homes, not to talk about the rest of the world homes, right? How many of these things that look smart, seem smart, will remain? Perhaps Mr. Sudjic, as the head of as the director of Design Museum, has a better idea for this.
I think all those things are actually now happening. If you look at what Nest is doing, artifacts that are the Internet of Things, which do allow you to do all those things which seem like fantasies 25 years ago, they are now actually happening. And I think that we are facing, Moore's law is real. It took 50 years for a working prototype of a telephone with copper wires to go from a prototype to mass acceptance. It took 15 years for a fax machine to do the same. Probably 6 weeks for a tablet to do that. Designing computers has gone from architecture, where you fill a whole room with equipment. Sotsas, my hero, once memorably asked himself, what should a computer look like? His answer was not like a washing machine. So computers have gone from architecture, room size, to furniture design, sitting on a desk, to something you put in your pocket, and they're now jewelry, something you put on your wrist. So though I might sound skeptical and questioning, there's no question that we are in the middle of a tidal wave of changes.
Talking about technology and objects, why do you think we use so often the image of the bikes in cities as the smart city image if the bike is a pre-technological vehicle? Does it make any sense?
Are you a cyclist?
Yeah, the good thing for bike is the smallness. As we can carry. The dimension is really important for human body. So the dimension of the weight of the bike is basically smaller than our human body, and then we feel very friendly with that kind of object, with that kind of products. So, as comparing with the bike, those bigger the vehicle is kind of very scary for humans, especially for kids. It is a big monster, and the city is. If we want to make cities smart, we should achieve that kind of as a human scale. It's a big lesson after metabolism. I want to talk about the metabolism. Metabolism is they try to make the city smart, but still, looking back, the dimension of the capsule of metabolism is very big. Then that they cannot replace the capsule at all. They made the capsule towers, but it is a fixed capsule tower, and never change it, never recycles, and because the capsule was too big for human.
So it was not adaptable. It was not flexible enough.
No.
Yeah. So as Mr. Kuma said, there have been previous attempts to make cities smarter. Actually, the whole history of the city is trying to get smarter, but the term is just new, and this is perhaps, from our point of view, one of the dangers. No, the fact that it becomes a fashion, like you said, Mr. Sudjic, like an avian flu, an intellectual trap in a way. How to make it something that lives, like really improves general life in the city? What to do with it?
Exploring how cities operate is something that is endlessly fascinating because we're exploring ourselves, we're exploring what life is like. And cities are complicated places. As somebody once said, a city is not a work of art. A city is never finished. A city is not a tree. Can you make cities do what you want them to do? There have been attempts. Haussmann, Robert Moses, Ceausescu. And usually these have unintended consequences, which is not what people wanted. Maybe it's better to try to understand the city as if you're a meteorologist, and if you look hard enough, you might work out whether it's going to rain or not. But it's probably not a good idea to try and make it rain. Cities, I suppose, are usually understood in by groups of people who don't really respect each other. So architects are the visible makers of cities, and yet they're not really the makers of cities. They depend on a complicated coalition of financiers, of politicians, of the egos of developers. But developers themselves are not these godlike figures saying, you will do this, because of course they have to make that complicated coalition of raising money. And a city is also shaped by people that plan roads and by people who frame the legal systems which shape a city and by the energy tariffs. And usually these people are aware of each other's existence, but actually they don't really respect them. They don't understand that to actually make this complicated organism, you need to be in the same room at least sometimes.
Mr. Kuma started his presentation talking about how architects, many architects in Japan have reacted after the earthquake. And Mr. Sudjic commented that perhaps it's not the same, there has not been the same reaction in other areas of the world. Perhaps yes in Spain, but basically because we can no longer keep on building for many different reasons. Now, the question I'd like to ask now is it smart for architects to keep building in the same way as they are doing it now, so globally, so internationally, having the same architects building all over the world? Is it good for them? Is it good for the profession? Is it good for the building? Is it good for the city? Is it smart, I mean?
Yeah, basically my attitude is I am designing different buildings, depends on the place. Some architects is repeating himself. It's a kind of ready-made commodity. Adapt the standard to everywhere in the world. But I think it's very boring. So for architects themselves, because every solution should deeply related with the place, and we should find the appropriate solution from the place itself, and also the people themselves. And then the conversation is the basis of smart city. And if we still follow the commodity system in 20th century or a branding system, it destroys the place itself. It is a very dangerous attitude. And some architects are still repeating themselves, and it's very bad for the environment.
So we have about 6 minutes left, it says in here. Perhaps it's a good idea to share these speakers with you if you have any questions. Otherwise, I will ask about further questions. To use the opportunity of asking them anything specific. I cannot see if anyone wants them to say something, or if not, I would like to know what is your idea of dealing in a smart way with both culture and education? Because this morning many speakers talked about sharing knowledge, but sharing knowledge is not sharing business, and it's perhaps educating rather than creating cultural icons and items. How will education and culture be transformed, or what role would they play in smart cities?
Well, if I can speak from the British context, London is, at the moment, the world believes that London is quite an interesting place to be. It's full of buildings being built by some people who are repeating themselves. Not everybody. There are some interesting work. But really, that's not so much the issue. I mean, London now is menaced, one could say, by this strange fact that in a world which seems quite frightening, investing in residential property in London has become an asset class. So London is now building thousands of apartments, which in London we describe as buy to forget, which has had the effect of the median house price in London being something like 25 to 30 times the median salary of a London resident. This means that London's brilliant educational facilities, after those students have graduated, is no longer a place they can live. My kids can't afford to stay in London. They have to stay in my basement. This is not the way to create a sustainable, flourishing urban economy. I'd also say that one of the problems is that education has also turned into an industry. So the idea that you actually use your universities and your colleges to attract great students around the world, that's fine. But if you only see it as a means to earn foreign revenue, that's not fine at all. So I guess really the key is, how does one make a city go on being interesting and exciting and repeating itself? I mean, this problem is really serious. The Wellcome Foundation is one of the biggest medical charities in the world, and they finance the building of a research centre right in the centre of London, near King's Cross, where they are going to get the world's most gifted postdoctoral researchers to look into medical science of all kinds. Now, the Wellcome begged the British government to sell them the Olympic Athletes Village to provide these people with somewhere to live. They sold it to the Qatari government.
So no questions from the audience, from you? Yes, there is one question there. Yes? Perhaps there are microphones, I suspect, hope. There is one mic in the middle. That's
Hi. So thanks both the speakers for coming and such inspirational. And I would say, like many years ago or centuries, we know about cannibalism. And are we thinking about citybalism in the terms that maybe we're doing things now that we know where we are starting, but as you very well pointed, unintended consequences, we're going to get to results that maybe are not the ones we like. So my point is, as architects, would you say, for instance, that public officers and, let's say, rules of the game should be put it in another way, just to ensure their cities are going to be resilient, sustainable, and specifically are not going to eat the people who live in there. They're going to be able to come here to find freedom, and especially not to give to everyone the same, because we are all different, but just cities should provide everyone with many, many, many choices so we can all do anything we want. I mean, reveal all the potential. And everything you've said, specifically for the students from abroad who come to London, or how kids should be able, to develop. So I trust in private-public partnerships. My question is, how could you see government and taking stronger action? Thank you so much.
Well, I'm definitely against cannibalism.
Well, perhaps her question was: are our cities going? Are we going to be able to use our cities the way we used to, or are they just going to be stages for tourists? And are we going to be able to keep living in our cities, both your cities and ours? And this should be the last question, because we have no more time.
I want to talk about the cities of Japan. The biggest problem we are facing is the empty house problem. So actually, 1/8 of the houses in Japan are empty, already empty. So 1/8 means that 12% of houses are empty, and in future, 2050. The quarter of houses, 20%, will be empty. This is the biggest big problem. The Japanese government is a historic after Second World War. The main policy is pushing the construction business and build many houses as possible. but still, they cannot change their policy. And the empty house will will increase year by year. It's a big problem for the society itself. Mm-hmm. Beyond the design, empty house is very bad for the city. If we can find the solutions with the government or with the officers. Without that kind of collaboration, we can solve that problem. Mm-hmm. This is one example of problem.
Yeah. Anything, Ms. Sudjic, you would like to add? Or?
Sometimes it's like a military strategy, and sometimes I think that cities fight the next battle with the weapons of the last war.
Okay, this is it for this session. I hope we have left you with at least a few questions, a few doubts. We talk about our fear that smartness in cities is the new fashion. We talk about pre-technology as another way of using technology in many, many more cities, and we talk about the cohabitation of empty cities with mega cities. Thank you very much, Mr. Kuma and Mr. Sudjic, and thank you.